This is the Post Shift Podcast, a raw look at the hospitality industry. What is happening, Post Shifters? Welcome to another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Shawn Soole. This week, I kind of wanted to do this last week, but this week is definitely the lineup for it. I wanted to kind of put together a couple of bartenders' testimonials on a fellow bartender who passed away about 4 years ago last Friday, Brewster. And I think he made such an influence in the industry that I always want to keep his legacy alive as much as I can. And so I got to get like 4 or 5 people. I wish I could have got more, but I got about 4 or 5 people who gave me testimonials of how Brendo touched each one of their lives and how he influenced their careers as much as he really did. And there was a lot of people out there, from Edmonton to Calgary to Victoria to Vancouver. There was a lot of people. I got what I could get from the bartenders that I talked to, but I thought, why not start this episode with me sharing my favorite Brendo Nintendo memory. And there's a lot. There's a hell of a lot of Brendo Nintendo memories that I absolutely adore. But the big one, which is one of the last memories I remember before he passed, was Whiskey Fest 2016. Brant and I walked into Clive's after doing an event, and all I heard was that big bear-like brawly voice of his go, "Soole! Soole!" And I'm like, "Yeah, Brendo, what's up, buddy?" And he's like, "I got something for you. You gotta try my Mezcal Aviation." And seeing that Brendo was always the pioneer of like a Calvados Negroni and all these like weird subs out for Calvados and cocktails, which was always one of his favorite spirits, I was like, "Oh fuck, dude, you're such a fucking hipster." He's like, "No, trust me, it's gonna be great." And so Brant and I sat down and tasted his Mezcal Aviation, and to be really freaking honest with you, the Mezcal Aviation is fucking on point. And after that, I actually put it on the menu at Cafe Mexico for a couple of seasons, and it was a really big seller. But if you're listening to this, you really need to try Mezcal Aviation. Honestly, do what Brendo says. Try Mezcal Aviation. Don't think it's too hipster. It is really a fantastic cocktail, and it needs to be tried. Same proportions as usual, but try it. Sub out your gin for Mezcal. I have a ton of great memories about Brendan, but the one thing that always stood out for me is that he was always the underdog, and he always took on venues that didn't deserve him or the program he was going to put into place there. And he always just strived. He always just hustled. He always ground. He was just a grinder, and I love him for that. He was always looking for that random kid who was working at a shitty sushi restaurant that he got hired to be the bar manager at to inspire and to build a better bartender in all of us. And I miss him a lot, especially now as our industry progresses. And I hope you enjoy all these memories, guys. And if you've got great memories from Brendo, please comment underneath and just tell me how Brendo touched your life. So hope you enjoy this episode, guys. I really, really loved it. Chat to you soon. Bye.
I'm Wes Bourget, and this is my story about Brendan Brewster, who was an icon in this industry and helped to teach me much of what I know about bartending before I met fucking Shawn Soole, A1 first class. But no, I think the best story for me to relate sort of his character and how I think of him is the first time that I ever met him. When I first started bartending, I had about 4 days of experience. You remember this? Yeah. I was working at a restaurant that had put me on the bar 1 day a week, and then registered me for the Best of the Pacific Northwest cocktail competition at Art of the Cocktail in Victoria. God, what year was that? 2012, 13, I think. And I was competing against people like Ryan Malcolm and Nate Cottle and Brendan Brewster, whose skill and notoriety would warrant them competing in international cocktail competitions against me, who is a 21-year-old kid with no experience. And so I ended up being sat across from him during the written part of the exam, and we chatted a little, but mostly got down to business. And then after the competition, I wasn't feeling super confident because obviously everyone had outperformed me considerably. But the one thing that I remember from that day specifically is Brendan coming up to me afterwards, and his, what he said to me was essentially, hey, make sure you keep going, make sure you don't stop, because you're the future of our industry, and you're the first generation of bartenders that didn't become bartenders because they saw the movie Cocktail. Which, it was nice to hear that from somebody who seemed like such an industry giant at the time, and continued to be anyways. And then I was lucky enough that, a couple months later, he actually moved to Victoria and started working with me at Clive's. And, for the next 8 months, I got to work under his tutelage and glean at least a little bit of the wisdom that he had to offer.
You see that our well gin and vodka, one world's best vodka?
I did see that. Yeah. That's the short and nasty of it. And there's, I'm sure I have 1,000 more stories to share, but I think he's essentially the reason why I'm still bartending.
Hey everyone, my name is Brittney, and I have been racking my brain trying to figure out the best Brendo story to tell. The one that'll do justice to what an incredible, talented, kind, sweet, funny, thoughtful person he was. And I realized that story actually doesn't exist, because anyone who knew Brendo knows that his personality was way too big, and the impact he had on the lives of those he knew was way too great to ever be done justice by a story or 2 or 3 or 4 or a million. Because Brendo was one of the most real people that this world has ever seen, and he could never just be an anecdote. He was always a constant, and that's what made him such an incredible friend. So I'm going to try and do justice to a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of everything that made Brendo, with the story that I always think about when I just think about how exceptionally kind he was. When I was backpacking solo through Europe, a lot of it was a lot of fun, but there are also parts that are scary. And Brendo was always the best person to talk to about anything that was scary, because he always had advice and a shoulder, and just generally was incredible. And I remember telling him the night before I went to France that I was feeling pretty lonely, and I didn't realize that I would feel that way from solo travel for so long. And of course, he cheered me up and made me feel better. The next morning, I went on the plane, got to France, and he sent me a picture of himself eating French fries. And he told me if I was feeling lonely, to just let him know what country I was in. And he would get food of the same style, and then we could eat it together and not feel so lonely. And I think that story really captures Brendan, because he was never the kind of person who would just say, "Oh, I'm sorry you're feeling sad," or "I'm sorry you're hurt, I hope you feel better." He was always the kind of person who would actively try and make people feel better, even if it was something small up to something extreme. And, yeah. I miss him.
Good evening, my name is Vincent. It must have been over 10 years ago that I first met Brendan. And one of my fondest and earliest memories of Brendan is him coming to visit me when I was bartending at Canoe, and he was just so excited about being able to make a fancy cocktail there. He asked if he could come behind the bar, and technically I probably shouldn't have, but he did it, and he just absolutely owned the bar. So excited and just taking care of everyone, and that really just sums up Brendan for me. It's an absolute cannonball of a person. Miss you, buddy.
We were friends more than we were acquaintances, but I'd gone through years of taking a break from bartending or being involved in hospitality. And two gentlemen, fine gentlemen, insisted on me coming back and joining the force again. And one was Brendan James Brewster. The other gentleman that I should name here, his name is David Matthew Mott, well-respected man in the community and hospitality industry. Fast-tracking, I did make my return, and one magical evening, I'm working at the Cove Pub on 4th and Alma. I'm the closing bartender and the manager on duty, and Brendo, for years and years, he had instructed me on how to pour a proper pint of Guinness, which is a craft in its own. And door opens at around 11 p.m. and the man rolls in, and I look at him like, Brendo, what are you doing? So, oh, hey man, what's up? I'm like, great. This is a pleasant surprise. He said, well, yes. What are you up to tomorrow around noon? And I responded by saying I don't know. Didn't exactly have any plans. He goes like, fantastic. I just entered you into a Guinness pour-off competition. It's going to be held at Doolin's, and we have a couple hours to practice. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. What? Don't I have to come up with cocktails? And there's more than just pouring a Guinness pint. And he said, yep, and that's why I'm here. We're just going to get it done. I'm like, dude, I'm not doing it. He goes like, too late. I have your email, I have your phone number, I have your first and last name and your address. Yeah, I've already entered you in. Long story short, he sat there, did the magic that he does, coached me through it, and we had a few cocktails and Guinness pints to drink, to be fair. Woke up the next day, nervous. I hadn't done one of these things before, so we came in and sat down, and my buddy Doug was one of the judges. He was surprised. I was like, what? How are you here? I'm like, I don't know. I'm here. It's this guy's fault. And he turns around. There's Brendo sitting there like the biggest fan with a big giant flag waving. Go Hubert, Team Hubert. And anyhow, the competition ended, and I came in third. And the judges told me that I would have come in first if I was too tired or nervous, and I had wiped the bar before I started the competition, which is very much a given etiquette, to be fair. And I completely skipped my mind because I was just tired. But that is one of the best qualities the man had as a friend up here, or a coach, to want to see everyone succeed and do better and do more of an excellent job than anyone else, including himself. He always put himself out there to ensure that. And that was one of my proud moments, and amongst hundreds and hundreds of stories that I have, thought that is one of the more inspirational ones. I was really mad at him, but then we went out for drinks and we laughed it off, and he got me stuck with a bill and made fun of me and laughed. And I wish he was here so I can tell the story again. Anyhow, it's the week of his passing coming, and it's emotional. I'm hanging out with his
Thanks, Post Shifters. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you're listening, whatever platform you're on, give me a good rating, subscribe, listen along. I'm going to keep going. I really enjoy sitting down with people and learning where they're from, what they did, and how they got to where they were. So if you love it, give me a good 5 stars. If you don't, give me 1 and I'll try harder.